So, I want to start this video. Just want to say thank you for those who have been viewing my videos thus far. I appreciate the interest and well, I guess yeah, that's about it. um, and in this video, I want to talk uh, in a bit of a different direction. Um, and there's not really any specific direction I'm taking these videos in. It's more just kind of what comes in my head, and I want to talk about, discuss. And if you're interested in, hearing about it, listening, being curious stuff, I'm all for it. I appreciate it. And of course, as always, if you have any questions or thoughts regarding my videos, I'm more than happy to hear them, receive them, read them if you want to put in the comments, whatever the case may be. I'm obviously no expert with YouTube videos, so if there are any more experienced YouTubers out there watching this and have any advice for me on ways to potentially improve, um, then I'm more than happy to receive that. I don't really plan on making this channel anything big or major. It's more of just to a platform for expressing my own thoughts, experiences, and just having a little fun with it. That's really all I'm doing with this. Um, so before I do start this video, just a disclaimer that given that I'm going to be talking about anxiety in reference to like working out, physical activity, and stuff like that. Um, if you do suffer from or deal with anxiety, potentially at a clinical level, taking medications for it, or just you know working through it. I can't guarantee that this video won't be triggering, but if it is, then definitely do what you feel you need to work through it. Whether it's pausing or stopping this video, just continue watching it. I mean, obviously, I don't want to encourage people to watch it just to watch it at the expense of their own mental health, because I'm all about mental health and just personal well-being, taking care of yourself. So if you need to, not watch this video for that, I certainly won't take any offense to that. I appreciate what you need to do for yourself, and I respect that you are aware of and understand what works for you, which is the important thing. Of if it works for you, that's great. If you're using a technique that's not work for you, obviously try. I would suspect to try something different to just find what fits best for you. What works for some people doesn't work for other people. Same for me. There's certain methods I use to address and work through my own anxiety that don't necessarily work for everyone else. So it's a personalized basis of what works best for you. Um, so regarding anxiety, I also want to take a moment and just specify what the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, Volume 5, specifies what anxiety is. I mean, if you already know what it is or experience it for yourself, great. But for those who are viewing this video and don't necessarily know what anxiety is or have confused it with other things, this is just a chance to kind of clear the air and make sure people are aware of this is what anxiety really is, or at least what the psychological mental health community states as anxiety. So it's essentially an anticipation of future threat. And some people tend to confuse anxiety with fear. Fear, on the other hand, is the emotional response to real or perceived imminent threats, which is basically something that's happening right in that moment. Whether it's, and I hate to make it seem so intense, but just to make the point across, if you're being robbed, or if someone's about to physically hurt you, then there's a fear of that in that moment of um, being attacked. Like you can see you can see the threat coming to you is visibly you know in the present moment, something you need to be concerned about, aware of, and your sympathetic nervous system kicking in to you know say, do I need to fight this threat, this current fear? Do I need to, flee, run away, whatever the case may be? Or do you end up freezing in the moment where your body is just, frozen, can't think of what to do, and just completely like, um, stuck in that moment, unable to really make a decision one way or the other, and just freezes. And any of those methods, it's perfectly normal. It's just part of the human response. But the moment it becomes anxiety is when, after experiencing these fear events, is down the road, if you're concerned about, oh, this potentially might happen again, even though there's no cues or references for it to actually happen in that moment, it's a concern about potentially happening down the road, as it says with future threat. In the future, down the road, not happening yet, but given that it's happened before, or you've heard about a story from someone else experiencing it, then it's a concern that it may happen again. So that's the anxiety component. The thought of it happening again, the thought of the conditions occurring again down the road is that the future, I guess you could call it future fear. I guess is a more of a layman's term of putting it, a future fear. But it's not something that will definitely um, most definitely happen. It's more it could happen, it might happen. There's potential of it happening, but there's no confirmation of it actually happening. Is that concern of it potentially happening down the road? It's that future threat. So I just wanted to state that just to kind of give a preface to what that entails. And for those who are curious, there's also different types of anxiety that exist. Just for if you do have that curiosity, what's stated on here, there is like specific phobia, concern of a certain thing happening, or a fear of certain things, whether it's animals, spiders, you know clowns, whatever the case may be. That's a phobia is part of that can be associated with anxiety and fear. Um, and let's see, there's a page on here talking about, so there's social anxiety disorder. Um, and if you guys, those viewing this, are curious about any of these different disorders, feel free to look it up online, or if you do have someone you're aware of who is in the mental health field, you can always ask them as well, just for curiosity, educational purposes. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of good references online for this information as well, if you do wish to seek it as well. And there's a panic disorder, which is panic disorder. It's similar to anxiety, but it's more of an extreme version of anxiety. It's a um, you know, so it says here, like, recurrent unexpected panic attacks is an abrupt surge of intense fear or intense discomfort that reaches a peak within minutes, and during which time four of the symptoms listed in here are occurring. And so it's that thought of fear without the actual you know fear situation happens. It's a mental fear, so your body's responding to the thought of it, and that's where the panic comes in. Granted, I'm speaking more to my own personal perspective on this. I'm not saying that this is actually what, because panic attacks are different for every person. Everyone experiences it differently. But that's just some of the things to put out there, just for your own personal awareness. And knowledge, if you wanted to know about that or not, up to you. But I would, if there is any concern of um, experiencing these situations for yourself as well, then I would strongly recommend seeking out the help of a mental health professional, whether it's a counselor, psychologist, psychotherapist, or well, yeah, pretty much those options there would probably be a good um, resource to use. And if you're not certain of where in your community you can reach out to these sources, a definitely good resource to um, utilize is psychologytoday.com. Psychology Today is all one word, and that gives you access to all the mental health professionals in your community based on zip code, states, country, all that stuff. And it'll specify what they're trained for, fees, insurances they take or not, if they offer sliding scales or not, depending on need, and their specialties and experience, how long they've been practicing for and stuff. Just to give you some good resources if you decide to partake in that, because obviously I definitely believe in people taking care of themselves, and sometimes that means seeking out professional help, which there's no shame in that. It's perfectly normal to seek out help. It's what we do as a society. It's as a community, we work together as a group, as a community, and if you do need a little extra help, then by all means, seek it out if you need to. However, one thing I would disclaim is I've encountered some people who've done like they've noticed some symptoms of their own with regards to certain mental disorders and thought, oh, I have this. As much as it's beneficial and useful to recognize those potentials yourself initially, to be recognizing those symptoms, no mental health disorder can be officially diagnosed without a mental health professional doing an assessment, in addition to officially make that diagnosis over a period of time. And for me, even though I do experience anxiety just as I'm sure most of the population of the world really does, especially with this recent pandemic that's been going on for almost a year at this point. And it has a lot of uncertainties and uncertain future threats with the anxiety component. I'm sure a lot of people are very well aware of it now, if they weren't before. But it's good to seek out professional help if you do need to utilize the services. And right now, especially with the pandemic, it's much more widely offered online via teletherapy. And so it has grown in its ability to be more widely available, which is good. But yeah, just seek it out if you feel the need to. Do what you need to do for you. You know your body best. You know your mind best. You've been living it with it since birth, basically. So only you know your body the best. But if you do notice, potential symptoms or concerns that are giving the inclination that maybe I'm suffering from a mental disorder, then definitely seek out professional help to work on addressing that for your own health. But the reason why they don't recommend people to obviously do self-diagnoses is because most people don't have the adequate knowledge or understanding. Not saying that some people don't, but majority speaking, typically people don't have the understanding or awareness to make the official diagnosis, and it's hard to do that for yourself when you're living in it. It's best to have an outside perspective, because as you do with communicating, engaging, talk with people, is what you think of yourself is different from what other people perceive and view. It's good to have that confirmation, that recognition of, oh, what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling is actually legit, is actually real. Which is why having that communication and therapy is so important, to have that confirmation of, oh, what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling is real, is actually happening, it's legit. So having that confirmation is useful. But like I said, for having that initial awareness of those symptoms for yourself is a good start, because then oh, I might need to seek out professional help to assess and confirm what I'm experiencing may actually be this or not. So definitely good to consider that and seek out the resources if you feel need. And one last thing I wanted to speak on before I actually go into my personal experiences with anxiety in regards to working out, physical activity and stuff, is some good techniques to address and center yourself, if you will. Find your homeostasis, your internal calm zone to address the anxiety. Some things that I use sometimes, and obviously because I'm human, I make mistakes just like everyone else. As I'm maybe making mistakes here and there on this video, and if I do, I apologize. It happens. Um, then these are some techniques that I've used or have been informed about. And I've been in therapy a lot myself as well. It's perfectly normal, and it's a beneficial thing to seek out for general well being. Is for one, breathing techniques. So a common one is breathe in through your nose. And when you breathe in through the nose, you hold it for a moment when you breathe in, and then when you release out, you breathe out for a longer period of time than you do when you're breathing in, because you're breathing in is just it's breathing in that oxygen, that good chemical oxygen in your body, into your brain, give you that necessary supplement that you need to survive, to live, obviously. But when you hold it is and being mindful about what you're experiencing when you're holding it. Because in that moment when you release that breath through your mouth, being mindful about what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, and if you're having anxiety, concerns, frustrations, uneasiness, letting that go, being mindful of that experience and being mindful about letting it go, visualizing letting it go, and it will help to calm your tensions, your emotions, your thoughts, feelings. All that stuff will help to calm it down and center it and be more balanced, mentally and emotionally balanced. Because it's giving your body a chance to recognize what's going on and engage in that parasympathetic nervous system to regulate it into being more centered and balanced. Um, that's what it helps with, because breathing in, you're building up that tension, you're building up that, you know, um, sort of emotional knot or something like that, I think. I'm doing my best to describe this from personal experience. So when you breathe in and you're holding it for a moment, you're feeling that sort of pressure building up as you're holding it in. And then when you release, it's kind of like loading up the emotional gun. You're loading up the emotional tension to when you breathe out, letting it release. So you'll feel that sense of calm, that relaxation, that, you know, sense of ease start to settle in once you breathe out. And it's a very calming feeling. It's, as I'm sure some people know who may be doing yoga watching this, or not currently watching yoga or currently doing yoga watching this, although you may be, who knows. Everyone has their own different things that they do while watching videos, who knows. But it's this common tactic used in meditation, yoga, um, mindfulness practices, whatever the case may be. It's very useful in those methods. And another one, for when you're kind of having difficulties bringing yourself into the present moment, is because obviously your brain is sometimes the brain is the human's worst enemy. It's when it comes up with those negative thoughts, those uncertain thoughts, those am I thinking this right? Am I not? Is that actually going on? Is it not? I don't know. So a good way to kind of bring yourself into the moment is also using what's called grounding techniques. And it's best to do it with you can do it either standing up or sitting down. Either way works. If you're more comfortable sitting down doing it, great. If you prefer standing up to do it, that works too. Um, but it's best to have it, if you're sitting down, best to have it with your feet on the ground, because it gives you that contact to the ground, that awareness of, oh, my feet are on the ground, I feel it, I can experience it, things like that. So it's being mindful, sometimes closing your eyes or keeping your eyes open, whichever method works best for you, or even just using those breathing techniques while you're doing grounding is even useful to combine the two. So like think about your feet being on the ground, how it feels to have it connected with the ground. Your foot, feeling the insoles of your shoe or flip flop, or even if you're just barefoot, just feeling the connection between your foot and the ground. The feeling of your butt in the chair, um, or other sort of connecting points in your body when you're sitting up. Because obviously when you're standing up, you're not feeling your butt in the chair, the contact between the two as much. So you don't have as many contact points when you're standing up, but it's fine. Sometimes it's best just to think of like how your body is feeling in that moment. Are you feeling, tension somewhere in your chest, in your legs, in your arms, in your head, wherever it is, being mindful of where that's happening, and then breathing through it to help it release. Because mindful awareness is the most important factor in order to let something go. You can't let something go if you don't know what it is or where it is in your body. So the first part of being aware and mindful is very helpful. Um, so that's kind of what I use for my own personal methods for addressing my own day to day anxieties. Um, do I use it every day all the time I need to? No, but like a phrase I always like to use to extent is the idea of practice makes perfect. The more you do it, the more benefit it gives to you. So me making these videos also helps bring myself a reminder to do it myself. So if you forget to do it sometimes, or you recognize the moment when you could have done it but didn't, the fact that you're recognizing that you could have done it is something, because then you're being mindful about the fact that when it was useful. So then being more present with the the next time that it would be useful. It's like, oh, now I can actually use it this time here, and it's just you keep thinking about it, you keep practicing it, and figure out which method, which route works best for you, and then just kind of go from there. Um, so so yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about um, my experiences, with being at the gym, working out, and obviously it's a bit different experience, being at gym now with wearing masks, and that does kind of make the experience of working out while uh, addressing anxiety a little more difficult. Admittedly, admitted, can't talk. Admitted to admitted. Okay, so some words are a little bit more difficult to speak sometimes. Admittedly, um, more difficult to be more centered, because as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, is when you're breathing with that mask on, it's not so bad when you're in a resting to normal, relaxed, or just walking pace breathing rate. Um, it's not quite as bad. I mean, obviously, there's still discomfort just having the mask on your face. Resting up against your nose, pulling on your ear potentially. It's still uncomfortable, but it's an added level of discomfort that you just have to kind of work through, and just work on centering yourself more so in the gym when you're working out, whether it's on a treadmill, or in my experience doing squats or bench presses, or leg extensions, or multiple different types of working out in various ways, lunges, whatever the case may be. It obviously it builds up that heart rate, and it can make breathing a little bit more difficult. Um, and so that's one thing I would say, for anyone viewing this who does deal with a decent bit of anxiety. Be mindful that when you're working out with a mask on, that you may need to take longer periods to just kind of you know rest, focus on your breathing, calm it down, recognize where that feeling is occurring in your body. For me, it usually is in the chest. Um, Not saying it couldn't be somewhere else, and so for someone else, but typically it usually occurs in the chest. But if it's somewhere else for anyone else, then great. I support it, because everyone has their own different experiences. Everyone's bodies respond to things differently, based on previous experiences, life situations, stuff like that. So I usually have to take a few moments, upwards of possibly a few minutes if needed, to just either stand in that spot and just try to do some breathing techniques. I'll breathe in through my nose, hold it for a moment or a few moments, depending on comforts. If you feel like holding your breath a little bit longer helps you better, obviously do that. Granted, I'd be cautious with holding it too long, because obviously too long of oxygen deprivation to the brain can be not ideal. Um, so do it based on your own personal comfort level. You know your body best. You know how your breathing works best. Um, so definitely that can be helpful. So like I said, just breathing in through the nose, holding it for however long feels most comfortable to you, and then releasing it. And for me, what I would do, especially when my heart rate is pretty high up, is like the 130s, 140s at least. When working out, I like to sometimes breathe out pretty heavily. Like I'll, breathe in, like I will force that breath out. I will push it out instead of just kind of like relaxingly letting it out. When you're in a more of a calm state, because breathing out more forcefully when you're working out, for me at least, it seemed to kind of helped, you know, shake my brain out of the freak out moment, um, the anxiety moment, if you will. Yeah, I like calling it the anxiety moment. Sounds pretty good. Anxiety moment. Um, but yeah, it can be helpful, especially when working out, to do that, to breathe out a little bit more force sometimes. Not saying that other people should do that. I just noticed it works pretty well for me to help kind of, because some of my anxiety also stems in reference to anger, frustration, things like that, which is why working out for me helps also with my anxiety. Working out helps with my anxiety as well in that regard. Um, so breathing in that manner works best for me. If there's other ways that work best for you, great. If it's breathing a little bit slower, a little bit faster, whatever the speed may be for you to breathe it out, just find that speed for you and do that. However, if you start noticing that if you're breathing out at certain paces and you feel a little lightheaded, definitely stop. Possibly sit down, refocus yourself, whether it's maybe closing your eyes or just focusing on a certain point to kind of reorient your internal balancing mechanisms, um, and just do whatever your body is telling you that it needs to do in order to kind of feel a little more calm and relaxed again. um, and especially if you're feeling a little lightheaded, that could also mean that you need to eat or drink a little bit of water or Gatorade, whatever it is, for some electrolytes possibly, in reference to the factor of working out in some manner. That could be very useful. But yeah, I use breathing techniques a lot when I'm working out. Um, Especially so like for me, I there was a couple times in high school when I first started doing free weights in high school. There was a moment when I was doing some squats with some weights, and the weight bar ended up, uh, I ended up losing my footing a little bit, and the weight bar ended up coming down on me. And thankfully, I didn't get injured, but it was a bit of a scary situation. Um, and certainly seeing the reactions and people around me when that happened added to the fear response. But it's just thoughts of like that, or even just you see those YouTube videos sometimes of compilations of workout situations gone wrong, and even that can strike a concern or fear in people sometimes when they're going to work out, if they aren't as personally centered and self-assured, and self-confident in their ability to do the workouts, which I feel like maybe more of a common concern, especially these days, given the fact that because of the pandemic, a lot of the gyms were closed for at least a few months, and unless you were doing some at-home workouts in some manner or another, then your strength ability has most likely gone down a bit. And so going back into the gym and trying to say you were doing 180-pound squats before the gym, and you go back in there and try to do say 170, 160, and you're like, oh my god, this is heavy, because your body has adjusted to not working out as much. You lost some muscle, possibly, not saying this case, but just given how the body responds to things, may put on a little bit of fat. Just that's normal. How the body responds, how it protects itself. Um, and so being mindful of, which is one thing I did when I went back to the gym after a few months of not being in the gym. Um, is I started at lower weights. I started about like, 115, 120. I started at a lower weight to kind of get a good analysis of where my current strength level was at, so that I could go from there. Because it's always best to, in any case, it's always best to start up, light, and then move up just to kind of get a gauge of where you're at. Because you don't want to start at like 150, 160 when you're, even if you're doing 180 beforehand, if your new current weight capacity is at 120. Because doing 150, 160, that could hurt you. Um, cause some spinal concerns, muscle concerns, a lot of those things going on. And it's best not to do that, because obviously if you go too far, then you could risk, possibly needing to seek out a chiropractor or a massage therapist, whatever the case may be. Which, not saying that you shouldn't be receiving service from them regardless. If you do, that's great. I applaud that and appreciate you seeking out the services you need for what works for you. Um, but for me, I like to be mindful of my money, just personally. Not saying there's anything wrong with using more money than I do. I live my life in a certain way is all. So I just be mindful of, like, if I do this, if I got to go to the chiropractor, then I gotta, you know go through that process stuff. Sorry. Anyways, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent. My apologies. Um, but yeah, so it's definitely useful to, bottom line, use those breathing techniques. I will do that, and a lot of people at Cena Gym probably do the same as well. But sometimes I'll have to center myself, close my eyes and focus on, what I'm feeling in that moment, to kind of, block out those thoughts, of, whether it's self criticism, or, belief of, oh my god, I'm about to do this much weight, can I actually handle it? And sometimes, having the right music, song going also helps as well. So definitely listen to the right kind of music in the gym in that moment is a huge game changer sometimes. Very helpful. But definitely breathing is a big component of it. And taking your time. It's something I'm still working on getting comfortable with, is being okay with taking a little bit extra time. And don't feel. I mean, it's one thing to say it and nothing to do it, obviously. So even if I say don't do it, won't change the fact that you probably will do it, maybe. But go back to thinking of practice makes perfect. The more you practice, feeling more confident in yourself, even if you have to fake it sometimes, the better you'll get at it. Um, so there's times I have to kind of, reassure myself that, okay, I can do this. I got this. And sort of shaking in some of that positivity. And the more you do it, the more it gets easier. And I would just have to try and bring the focus back into myself and what I'm doing,